Hello, everybody. My name is Gonzalo Veloz, also known as Gonz. I'm a senior creative and a senior video producer at a company called Alyce in Boston. I'm originally from Caracas, Venezuela. I'm a filmmaker and creative director, and I have been doing creative work for around 10 years. So, today I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can use creative work to help show the human side of your brand. So yeah, this presentation is based on my opinions and my experience. This is not a thing that is just like a perfect method. This is just like very general opinions based on my work, people that I have worked with, and just years of experience and research. So there's not a set way to approach creative work. There's plenty of methods, approaches, people of all over the world and every industry and discipline have different ways to approach creativity or creative work. So this is just gonna be a way to speak a little bit about in general about a lot of concepts, and then we're gonna dig in a little more into a framework that I like to use. So why creative? The concept of creative in terms of disciplines, I see it in video, I see it in design, I see it in photography, I see it in copywriting, and all those things around those types of disciplines and the types of work that encapsulates that. Um, and then why creative? Because it's an awesome way to show information about your brand and show concepts about your brand and kind of explore different ways in about how the story of your brand or your organization can be told. So first of all, it's a wild world because companies and organizations are trying to catch up with everything that it's happening, and it's really hard to keep up with the times. Yeah, all those emails when Corona, COVID-19 started about this tough times, this difficult times, this trying times, all of that. That shows how brands are just playing catch up, and there's not a lot of creativity happening around there. And what happens often with companies is that sometimes companies and organizations want to have creative work, they want to do creative stuff, but people and teams get super caught up in the nuances of measuring everything. This is not a jab to marketers, but sometimes it's kind of tough when a marketer wants to measure the air they breathe, the water they drink, and every single aspect of their day, because that's not usually how life works. And there's a mix of perspectives about what encapsulates creative work. Some people say it's arts and crafts. Often, some marketers and sales reps could say this. And this is kind of like a very wrong approach because it's a very undermining way to think about things that usually impact us in our life. And there's another kind of people that in this section that are the ones that say like that I have a phone, so that means I can do a video that it's going to look better of something that it's going to be that was shot by a professional. So it's kind of like that's part of the audience, of the public, that kind of undermines the amount of work and the amount of effort that it takes to do real good creative work. And that's bullshit. But then there are others that try to gatekeep it and to glorify it. The people that kind of like just openly preach that normal people can't be creative, or they can't try to do creative work, or the people that glorify the whole artist struggle and all this like bullshit stuff. That's, in my opinion, that's bullshit too. But for me, creativity and creative work, there are tools. There are ways to do. They're a medium for an end. But the thing is, they're not a tool only. They're a very powerful tool. Because regardless of where it lives in the process, or regardless of where you add creative work, it's always like a very useful thing. Because if you're trying to sell, is it better to send some information in like 27 paragraphs that are like super confusing to read, or is it better to send a 1 minute video that kind of explains the concept of something? Is it better to have a super long presentation about a specific piece of information, or a good, very clear and clean piece of design that can, you know, just showcase what you're trying to say. And the thing about creative work and creativity that to me is the most important part is like creative makes people feel things. Creative work makes people feel emotions that build connections, that build rapport, and all these like feelings that happen when something generates a reaction. And usually good creative is the kind that makes people talk, think, and remember your brand. Good creative, and this is maybe a case that it's a bit more specific to direct to consumer brands. Good creative create advocates for your brand because people think about it, people like are into it about the experiences and the philosophy that the brand sells using like good creative work. And like I was saying before, it often allows organizations to build rapport and connections with their customers and their audiences because it like levels them together into like a more emotional level. This is a phrase: if you touch people's hearts, you will touch their wallets. It was a phrase said by a very smart philosopher. Me. I came up with this phrase one day when I wanted to explain something to somebody, and usually, I mean, could be a bit weird or maybe douchey or something that might get put out of context, but it's just simple like a very snappy translation of that. Like you, usually a good way to sell something is by connecting in a human way with the people you're trying to sell to. So when we talk about creative, we usually talk about the usual suspects, the brands that everybody talk about, the Nikes of the world, Apple, Amazon, Google, Patagonia, Geico, Samsung, or the North Face, among many, many others. These are just ones that I really like the work that they do. And they're in different industries, direct-to-consumer brands, technology, insurance. And the thing about these brands is like, yeah, they have a ton of money to make creative work. It's pretty insane because they can spend millions of dollars in campaigns, and usually that's not the case for a lot of people, but they work, right? We talk about them all the time. They become case studies. They're used as examples in college courses and so on. It's a great example of a Nike campaign that was pretty controversial. This was another one by Patagonia that they used it, but I think in the New York Times in 2011, kind of talking about their recycling program. This was an ad made for Kindle, for Amazon, kind of like a bunch of different authors and characters of very famous books behind this person that has a Kindle. This was one for North Face that it's kind of like a very ambiguous image. It could look like a mountain. And then it's like a person that has a scar, and then in the bottom says made in adventure, hiking in a volcano is where this happened. It shows that this is clothes for adventurers that never stop exploring. Then Geico, usually with their mascot, they do very creative things. They do all sorts of different types of commercials, and they did kind of like a book, and it's like this like memoir type of piece by like this fictitious character that it's a character that kind of connects with people because it's kind of like a 3D animated cartoon that is in all these commercials and all these settings, and usually it creates a reaction from people. It generates a reaction from people. And this one is for Samsung, promoting their Galaxy A7, how to like their awesome low light camera settings. And yeah, it's all great creative. All these examples are print ads, and they combine great design, great photography, and great copywriting. And the key aspect of all these huge companies and other smaller companies that are doing branding and creative work right is that their creative work spark things, spark conversations, spark ideas. But in my opinion, the real secret of great creative work is work that can stand the pass of time. often there are those pieces of advertising or work that many years pass and we still talk about them, and those are the ones that usually is like the usual example are a lot of consumer brands. But I feel that slowly we're seeing that type of approach to creativity and advertising and work from smaller brands from very unconventional industries. So this is an example, a few B2B software companies that I really like the work that they do. Envision, that is a design software. Zero, that is an accounting software. They do amazing customer testimonials. MailChimp, that they are approaching marketing and creativity in such a unique way. They created like a media company inside of the company. Alyce, that I'm a bit biased because I work there, but we are all about the concept of the 5 to 9. So like the whole self of the person. You're not only trying to sell the person that goes to work from 9 to 5, but we're also trying to help and understand and get to meet that customer and what do they like to do from their 5 to 9 and connect with them through that. Zendesk, that is a help like a help desk software. They have awesome branding. They did a rebrand. I think that was pretty awesome, pretty clean. I like to reference it a lot for a lot of stuff and ideas. Slack, that is a huge company that is always being a trailblazer in terms of the stuff they launch and how they launch it, and their video work is amazing, and they're always innovating in the space. And then HelpScout, that is another company that has very clean branding, great creative, and overall, it's a very like clean experience and very attractive experience from a piece of software that might not be for everybody, but if you get to their website, you can appreciate the quality and how it looks, right? And this is an aspect that is important that just to tie it down to, okay, we talk about great creative and examples and all of that, but if you're a person, let's say you are a marketer that works in demand gen, but you kind of want to dabble into design work and photography or video or whatever, like how does that happen? Like how can you tie those things together? So the first thing is that we are in an age of a time of democratization. Technology and software have never been so accessible. Here's a great example. Back in 1995, a 1 megapixel camera cost $20,000. Now your phone has like a 4K camera, like 15 megapixel camera or something like that. So that's already a pretty strong evolution of the technology. And that means that everybody can approach creativity. That point that I was saying earlier, that there are a lot of people that try to gatekeep it, and there are a lot of people that try to like protect it, and they don't want amateurs trying to do creative work. But I believe that it's just a matter of it's the kind of work that everybody can do if they want to do it. And I hope more people try to do it, but I also hope more people try to understand the amount of work and knowledge that it takes to do really good creative work. And yeah, like I was saying, hardware and software are more accessible than ever for both professionals and aspiring creatives, but I feel there needs to be a little bit of a balance. Like I was saying before, some people say creative work is arts and crafts. Some people try to gatekeep it and glorify it. Some people say it's really easy, that they can do it with their eyes closed, and with a phone they can do better, like video, that if you have like a 10 people crew doing a professional video. Some people say that using Canva in their phone or some kind of like non-professional software like that, they can do better designs than like a seasoned designer. And honestly, that's super disrespectful because it's not true. Like, people need to get out of that bullshit mindset. And then the other part is that people try to keep it and like glorify it. Honestly, it's people, anybody can do it. It's just a matter of like any other activity in the world. You just need to focus, put the effort, try to learn it, and try to do it the right way. And we're gonna talk a little bit about that balance later on. So, like I was saying, this is kind of a framework that I have to kind of approach creative work. my main area of expertise is video and animation, and I use this framework in a little bit of a different way for that. This is more a general approach of to approach creative work. So it's 3 steps. So the first step is understand your limitations. The second step, reason behind everything, but it needs to look decent. And the third step is make adjustments. So limitations, right? Lack of resources, lack of expertise, lack of time. It encompasses a lot of what I was saying earlier. Like maybe you don't have a professional camera, DSLR with a bunch of lenses and a bunch of lights, but you have your phone, you have a microphone, and you have maybe like a couple of small lights, and you have a good idea, and so you need to adjust, right? Like, okay, I can't have this like the perfect setting, but I have this other setting that could service my idea very well. Or I have to make like this design for this specific thing, but I have very little time, so what are the best ways so I can like, make it work, make quality work in a small amount of time. It's all about like being very self-aware about what are the limitations that you have in terms of how you're going to approach the work, or like the different ways that you could approach the work, because like there are so many limitations, even though you can be very professional, very seasoned, so many years of experiences, but it's a matter of, is there a budget? Do we have the equipment available? Is like does the stakeholder is the stakeholder invested in the project? Do they want to do what you want to do in the project? So it's all about finding those ways, being self-aware, and always try to like be cautious of the path that you take, because you need to be aware of what you're missing so you can be aware of what you can do with what you have. So that's pretty simple, right? Like if those are the kind of things that you're finding in your way, find support, ask for help, make adjustments, change things. In the terms of knowledge, of if you don't know what you're gonna do, or if you're lacking a little bit of knowledge is out there and it's free. There's like so many sources of information, the internet, YouTube tutorials, all sorts of educational platforms that you can gather information if you're kind of earlier in the game and you don't know exactly what to do. And yeah, cut the bullshit. Stop making excuses about this, because there's always a way, and it's a matter of being conscious and self-aware about what is the end and the goal for the project and how you should approach it, understanding that sometimes not sometimes, usually it's not gonna go the exact way that how you want it to go. Number 2, and reason behind everything, is that something that happens often from creatives, this is usually the big problem with creatives, is like people just want to create for the sake of making stuff, and this is very fed into the everyday lives, because there's like this new tendency that creators and content creators and makers and all that stuff, and it's kind of like a very frivolous approach, because if you're doing a project or you're doing design or whatever you're doing because you're doing it for fun, great. Like, suit yourself, do what you want to do, whatever makes you happy. But if you're doing it for our organization or you're doing it for your company, there needs to be a reason. You cannot be wasting time and money in like superfluous things that are not gonna help your colleagues, your teammates in hitting a specific goal that the company depends on. So that's one thing that is very important to understand. Like I was saying, it's a waste of time and money, but it's really important for creatives to be aligned with the other teams. And this is something that I really like to talk a lot about, because the best example is marketers and creatives. The whole thing about so often marketers underestimate the work of creatives, and sometimes creatives are in this weird mindset that they just want to make art and not really do what it needs to be done to support the marketers. So there needs to be some kind of consensus and work together and teamwork to really get together and find solutions through creativity to achieve certain goals. And And going back a little bit, yeah, it's often that sometimes people underestimate creative work because they give more value to traditional jobs than the value that they give to creative work that might be perceived as just an artsy person doing arts and crafts or artsy things. So, you know, that's the kind of topic that I have a bit of a chip on my shoulder about, but I often like to talk about it because I feel that it's becoming more and more often that companies are trying to hire creatives. They don't know what to do. They don't know the kind of person they're trying to hire, and they make a lot of mistakes. And usually, and more often than not, those mistakes are not the fault of the creative. It's more like the person that is hiring doesn't know the reasons why they're hiring this person, or what are the goals, or what are the things this person needs to do. And it's about alignment and really trying to understand what it takes. Going back to like the whole reason behind everything, this is in my opinion. I think good creative needs to be concise, simple, and relatable. You need to tell the story, give the message. It needs to be simple, that usually people that are not in your industry could understand, and maybe try to make it relatable. Try to introduce unusual, like the concepts of your industry or your company into like a more familiar setting, just in case somebody doesn't really understand exactly what your organization does. It's usually a good idea to try to like maybe bring together familiar concepts or ideas to that and tie them together, because it's just going to be a better way for normal people or people that are outside of the industry to understand what you're trying to do. So for example, for video, tell your story, bring your audience from point A to point B, explain what you're trying to do, make them feel excited. If it's like a sizzle reel or something, make them want more, to see more what your company is about. If you're trying to like an explainer video, make sure that no piece of information gets left out. It's just a matter of using the tool in the right way so people get the message. For copy, I'm not a copywriter, but I often say that for a good copywriter puts a whole lot of meaning behind a few words. And I think that could be an accurate concept more often than not, because good copy says a lot in very little. For design, I like to say that design is usually the war paint of an organization. You're showing your colors, you're showing like visually in a way what the company is about, and good design can solve many problems. And yeah, creative work needs meaning, needs purpose, and needs a reason. But going back to a concept that I was talking a little bit about earlier, it needs to have reason, and sometimes those reasons, those meanings, those purposes are not things that are going to be measured, because not everything needs to be measured. Like, not everything needs to be a concept, not everything needs to be something that you need to track. Like, sometimes you just need to create something really good that is going to make people talk about your brand and maybe turn them into advocates of your brand. So sometimes you just gotta go with your gut. And point number 3, make adjustments. It's all about being flexible and open when you're trying to approach creative work. It kind of overlaps a little bit with point number 1. Like I was saying earlier, today equipment and software, it's more accessible than ever. It's easier. It's closer to reach for everybody. So there's not a lot of issues around that. And the other part is, a lot of companies kind of try to rely on people that don't know what they're doing, people that don't really want to do the work. And right now there are like so many amazing professionals out there looking for jobs. There are many talented designers, many talented videographers, talented copywriters. All sorts of people are looking for jobs. They're really talented and they can bring your company to the next level. But there's 2 things that I want to state here, very important. First of all, you need to pay them fairly. And second of all, you need to understand that a copywriter is a copywriter, a designer is a designer, a videographer is a videographer. I see a lot of job postings that, pay very little, and they want the person to do 27 jobs, and they're not going to do them well because you're not setting the person for success, and then the person that gets blamed for that failure is the creative and not the person that approach that in such a holistic way. So make sure that there are like boundaries and there's like very clear expectations on why do you need a creative professional, and not fall into this idea that you're just gonna bring somebody and that person is gonna change everything forever without like guidance, support, and help. So that. The other thing is, we're in a time, especially in the B2B software SaaS industry, that I feel that the bar is really low sometimes, because people, like a lot of organizations and companies, like to play it really safe. So one thing that I want to encourage people, and one adjustment that I want to ask people to make, that change the mindset, because there are so many opportunities to experiment and to do new things. And honestly, it doesn't matter the industry where you are. There's always ways to make something cooler. So kind of to wrap up, honestly, this was a very short presentation probably, but I want to wrap up with a quick anecdote tied up together to that concept of people that want to start doing creative work and want to support their organizations, or maybe for their own personal brand. Like I was saying before, I've been making video work, I've been doing video work and creative work for 10 years probably, and the thing is, like, I have done awesome work that I'm really proud of, that I have met so many amazing people, but the thing is, like, it's been a career of 10 years, and the thing is that I could never afford a camera until I moved to the US a few years ago, or literally afford formal training because of the situation in my country. I'm originally from Venezuela, and that's an excuse. That's a thing that I hear a lot. Like, people ask me, and they think that you need to go to film school, or like you need to do this or you need to do that, and I have a belief that, yeah, if you want to go to film school, or if you're young and you want to go to film school, or if you're a seasoned professional but you want to try to mix things up or learn stuff, like, the knowledge is out there. There are ways, and like I've said several times in this presentation, stuff is so close to reach now that there's not really limitations in terms of how to take the first step. So one last thing that I just want to say as my parting message is that, despite of my upbringing and all the challenges and all the things and all the issues, I tried to pursue creative work. I encourage everybody to try creativity. It doesn't matter if it's for work or for fun, because it's going to be a way that it's going to help you intellectually to stay sharp and to stay up to the trends and what's happening around the world and in different industries. So my last question for all of you is, what's your excuse? Thank you so much. Like I said earlier, my name is Gonzalo. I work at a company called Alyce. You can call me Gonz. And if you want to get in touch with me, you can email me to my email that's here on the slides, hello@gonzaloveloz.com, or you can reach out to me in different social media accounts, and my handle is @GonzVeloz. Thank you so much to the team at PictoChart, for inviting me to this event. I hope what I shared here in my broken accent was helpful for all of you, and I hope I get invited to more of these events, because I just love to talk about creativity and creative work, and I feel very proud, and I feel awesome when I get to talk about it, and with people that want to hear about it. So thank you so much. Until the next time. Bye.